Welcome back to Got to Have Faith Part 2. If you've not listened to Part 1, I strongly recommend that, as this episode would seem completely in the midst of things. As I was covering in the previous episode of Got to Have Faith on the methods and reasoning for believing, using faith, and giving critique of its shortcomings, this episode will continue where we left off. So let's dive right in and stay a while and listen. Continuing on now with addressing how faith is used as a reason to believe in God. One example is personal spiritual experiences. Many individuals cite personal spiritual experiences as a basis for their faith. These experiences may include a sense of God's presence, answered prayers, or moments of profound connection and inspiration that reinforce their belief in a higher power. The problem is that it's subjective and extremely well documented that these experiences tend to fit with a person's prior beliefs. People's perspectives of an experience, psychologically speaking, they tend to interpret an experience to fit with their expectations. You are more likely, if the experience is ambiguous, to make it fit to what you think it should mean or represent. And don't underestimate the power of the mind, since some are not ambiguous experiences, but it's a clear voice, or you see a figure, a person that looks like what you would consider to be your God or your representation of a God. Again, these are well documented. It's not unique to Christianity. It's just one of many religions that have similar experiences. A personal experience does not indicate the truth of something. Note that I'm not claiming that people are not having some of these experiences. Not at all. I'm stating that people tend to attribute these experiences to supernatural origin, which there is no objective justification for. As the vast majority of people, these claims tend to be consistent with the subject's prior beliefs. These subjective experiences are claims and not evidence. Put it in this way, does a Hindu's experience of talking to their god Vishnu count as evidence for the existence of their god? Or do you see it as just a claim for the existence of their god? I'm assuming that you would say that no, it's just a claim for the existence of their god. Well, that logic applies to your personal experiences as well. Dogmatic religious people normally tend to have this double standard for supernatural claims. When it happens to you or someone in your in group with your similar beliefs, it's real. But when it happens to someone else with a different religious belief, it's just a claim. This psychological phenomena is perfectly summed up by what is known as confirmation bias, where individuals tend to notice and remember and interpret information in a way that confirms their pre-existing beliefs. Something I have to actively work against on a daily basis in an attempt to be more open-minded to ideas that contradict my own. I'm open to being wrong and actively attempting to be intellectually honest by evaluating and re-evaluating my own beliefs and opinions. Now let's address how faith is used as a method of believing in God. And we're looking at scripture here. Now, faith in God is often connected with the sacred text of religious traditions. Believers may place their trust in the Bible and other religious scriptures, seeing them as divinely inspired and authoritative sources that provide insight into the nature of God's will. Thus, if you believe in scriptures to be true, you strengthen your belief in God with relying on what the scripture says. But sneaking in words like divinely inspired and authoritative sources. I ask, based on what evidence? You say faith or trust. I mean, sure, but this does not make it true. Before you accept that the Bible is divinely inspired, I remind you that it is men that wrote down the words, and before these words made it into what you would now know as the Bible, there was even more men involved in the vetting process to consider the books that we have today in the Bible as being canonical or divinely inspired. You are putting your trust in the men that claim they wrote down a divinely inspired text. And then, in an ongoing process for around 100 to 300 years later, then furthermore, you put your trust in a group of other men, again, to debate which books would be considered to be divinely inspired. It does not end there. How did you even become aware of Christianity in the first place? Who told you that it was true? You had to put your trust in a parent or a pastor, for example. Again, faith and trust in men to write the words, and faith and trust in men to debate which book should be considered as inspired by God, and then faith and trust in a parent or partner or pastor to tell you that it is all true. However, this works exactly the same in Hinduism. Working backwards now, if you were a Hindu, first you would place your trust in a parent or a holy man or a partner, not to lie to you. Then you trust the Hindu holy books, and then you believe and trust in the Hindu gods. It is faith in men, then men, then men, then God. Simply put, if you believe that the scriptures are divinely inspired because they tell us that God exists, then we are simply using the scriptures as evidence for their own validity. This is not a strong argument, as it does not provide any objective evidence for the existence of God. It's a fallacy of circular reasoning. It occurs when the statement is used to prove itself and rely on its own conclusion. With regards to the Holy Scriptures, the mistakes and the direct copying of Gospels and the later additions to Scriptures that are changing a single word that turns a mundane sentence into a fulfilled prophecy. The first or the earliest Gospel to be written down after Jesus' claimed resurrection was Mark. An example of this earliest manuscript of Mark 16 ends with the verse 8. But 200 years after his death, new updated editions including verses 9 to 20 was included. This is an objective fact, as scholars have copies of the earliest manuscript which excluded the verses from 9 to 20, and also when the new verses appeared in the later editions roughly 200 years later, they were written in a style different to all of those that previously were written down, indicating that whoever wrote down the first verses was definitely not the same person that wrote down those extra verses found 200 years later. These extra verses claim that after the resurrection of Jesus appeared in front of Mary as well as in front of 11 of his disciples, and on a separate occasion in front of 2 disciples, reinforcing the idea of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Unfortunately, scholars agree that these claims are added by a later editor or scribe, and for a book that is claiming to be divinely inspired and accepted in its current form for almost 2,000 years, only to be dissected and shown that it is altered and manipulated, it is not what I would call inspiring. If these events like the resurrection of Jesus truly happened, then why are people adding in text over 200 years later from the original scribes, giving more accounts of people seeing Jesus after the resurrection? The truth has no need of editing. Additionally, very noteworthy, the older or further away the Gospels get from the date of Jesus' resurrection claim, the more detailed the descriptions of the miracles Jesus performed, which is just strange how people seem to remember more and more details the longer time goes on. People tend to say that they put their trust or their confidence or faith in a God. But before you get anywhere near any definition of a God, should people be putting immense confidence, trust, and or faith into other people that lived hundreds or thousands of years ago that wrote things down claiming to be divine? Like I asked, how did you become aware of your religion if not through trusting people? And have you vetted these people on how they know that these claims are true? Or are you unique or special in the sense that, well, you would not be unintentionally misled by the ones close to you? Surely they could not and would not be mistaken about the truth of their religious claims, said the Christian, the Hindu, the Jew, the Mormon, the Jehovah's Witness, the Sikh, the Buddhist, the Muslim. Are they all just extremely privileged to be born into the one and only true religion as faith would have it? If in doubt, just have faith. It's your fallback, your fail-safe word for any doubt, endorsed by one of each of the 4,200 religions around the world. A bit tongue-in-cheek, but it highlights the ridiculousness of just trusting those that are close to you and thinking that, well, surely you cannot be mistaken. Continuing on with the methods to believe in God or your religion. Now let's talk about the inner convictions or intuition. Although inner convictions and intuition can provide valuable insight into our personal beliefs and experiences. They are subjective and unreliable when we use it as evidence to support objective claims. Our inner convictions and intuition can be shaped by various factors, including our emotion, cultural background, and upbringing. As such, they may not provide a reliable basis for making universal claims about the existence of God or the truth of a particular religion. Relying on subjective experiences such as inner convictions and intuition to corroborate beliefs is problematic, as it is also what a Hindu would use to solidify their belief in Vishnu. This creates a double standard, as it suggests that one's own subjective experiences are more valid than those of others. Well, should you be relying on these methods? Well, I would say yes, if you don't care about the truth and only want to verify your prior beliefs. But if you did care about truth, then, well, no. So, how about signs of provincial events as a method for belief? Well, simply put, subjectivity. They are subjective and can be interpreted in many different ways. What one person sees as a sign from God, another person may see as a coincidence or a natural event or a sign from a different God. This makes them unreliable as evidence for the existence of a God. This also includes confirmation bias. People who believe in God are more likely to notice and remember events that they interpret as signs from God, while ignoring or forgetting events that do not fit with their worldview. This can lead to a distorted view of reality and make it difficult to evaluate the evidence objectively. Furthermore, the lack of repeatability. Unlike scientific experiments, which can be replicated and tested by others, signs of provincial events are unique and cannot be reproduced. This makes it impossible to verify their authenticity or access their reliability. Okay, but how about spiritual leaders as a method to believe in God? There are several potential problems with using spiritual leaders as a primary method of belief, as spiritual leaders, like anyone else, have their own perspectives, biases, and interpretations of religious texts and teachings, as well as suppressing of individuality and critical thinking. When individuals rely on spiritual leaders to provide all of their spiritual knowledge, it can suppress their own capacity for critical thinking and independent inquiry. Another issue is the potential abuse of power. Spiritual leaders, especially those with large followings, can yield considerable power over their congregants. Let's just mention Catholicism and leave it at that. Onto what I would describe as the most problematic method, using faith as a guiding force. Now, let's see if any of these issues ring true for yourself. Subjectivity and the lack of evidence. Faith is based on a personal conviction and belief rather than on objective evidence or verifiable proof. This can make it difficult to distinguish between genuine faith and personal biases or wishful thinking. The inability to address contradictions and inconsistencies. Sometimes faith can lead us to believing things that contradict what we know from science or our own experiences. This can make it hard to make sense of our world and our ability to reconcile contradictions and inconsistencies with our belief. For example, when a believer gets confronted with an example that contradicts their belief, they can't give a concise answer since their reasoning would be fallacious. I hear this reply most often: I take it upon faith. Beyond intellect, beyond knowing, I just take it upon trust in God. However, if you are a Christian and you demonstrated to a Hindu why their religion is not true, the Hindu can just reply, I take it upon faith. The Hindus trust in their god or gods. And according to your reasoning, they are not just justified by doing so, but they are righteous and blessed for doing so. Another issue is the potential for manipulation and abuse. Sometimes people use faith to control others, especially when people are willing to put their faith above their own critical thinking and personal freedom. This can lead to people being blindly obedient and intolerant of others and afraid to question authority. Another issue, the suppression of doubt and or dissent. Faith can sometimes make people afraid to question or doubt their beliefs, even when they are presented with opposing evidence or different interpretations. This can stifle our intellectual curiosity and make it hard to grow and learn. This suppression is most definitely supplemented by fear, because remember, if you are wrong, you will burn for eternity. But not that anybody has ever used fear tactics in the past to get control over a population. Another issue is resistance to change and adaptation. Sometimes faith can lead us to hold onto our beliefs too tightly, even when the world around us is changing. This can make it hard to learn new things and grow as an individual. The prevailing theme surrounding faith in a higher power most often revolves around subjective opinions, accompanied by a suppression of intellectual exploration. I'm perplexed how one is encouraged by Scripture to derive objective truth without engaging in critical thinking and instead relying solely on personal opinions. I've got nothing to hide, but I don't feel the need to prove anything is something I would say if I had something to hide. Furthermore, the idea of faith as something that is beyond intellectual assent is, well, not unique. In Islam, the Arabic term for faith is iman. It involves more than just intellectual belief. It encompasses a holistic commitment of heart, mind, and action to the tenet of Islam. Faith in Islam is often described as a living, dynamic force that influences one's behavior, ethics, and relationship with Allah. In Hinduism, which also precedes Christianity, the concept of faith is expressed through the term Shraddha. Shraddha is not just belief, but a deep and sincere conviction that inspires religious practices, rituals, and devotion. It involves a sense of trust and commitment to the divine, and it is considered essential. In Sikhism, faith is expressed through the term Namrata, or humility. Sikhs believe in surrendering to the divine with trust and humility. Sikhs' faith emphasizes a deep commitment to God, ethical living, and selfless service to others. In Buddhism, faith or saddha is considered one of the essential factors on the path of enlightenment. It involves trust in the teachings of Buddha, confidence in the path, and a commitment to practice. Faith in Buddhism is not blind, it is cultivated through an understanding and experience. So at this point, I want to put a question to you, the listener. If a person grew up in a country plus a family and environment that was mainly Islamic or Jewish or Hindu or Sikhism or Buddhist, whichever one it might be, they were a devoted follower of that faith. They don't just believe in that God, but they are using the understanding of faith. They are actively taking part in forming a connection with the respective God of that religion, cultivating a relationship way beyond evidence or what people call facts. They believe in their heart of hearts that this God exists. They don't just merely praise or worship and devote their lives to this God, they love this God. What do you have in common with this person from another faith? Well, you both truly believe that your God exists, which normally starts off as a belief in your respective God by trusting someone close to you using faith. Then you both read the sacred scriptures, which is explained to you, and you cannot merely read the scripture and understand it literally. You have to be guided through a spiritual leader or some divine entity to understand the verses. This guiding and learning the Holy Scriptures give you a greater insight into the meaning and the understanding of your sacred Scriptures, far beyond that of a person not part of your religion or a non believer. You are capable of seeing and understanding and feeling your God's presence that cannot be investigated by scientific inquiry or a person from another faith. You are special. You both are special. An earnest question. Have you ever thought of leaving your faith? Well, how do you expect a truly faithful believer of another faith to do so if you aren't even capable of doing so. Because according to a personal relationship with their God and an unwavering faith that the Hindu or the Sikh or the Muslim or the Jew knows in their heart of hearts, they don't just know, they have faith that their religion is the one true religion. I have unfortunately heard many a believer condescendingly assert that a person who wants to seek the real God will find their real Christian God. Well, do you not think that they are capable of the same immutable, enduring, persistent faith in their own one true God as what you do? There is one thing that all religions cannot have in common. They cannot all be correct. They are mutually exclusive. One thing they all could have in common is that they could all be untrue. Moreover, if people that truly and earnestly seek the real God always found this specific God, be it Christian or Hindu or whatever, this would be open to scientific discovery and would have been tested and proven so. So if you have heard this assertion before, if you seek God, you will find the real God. I'm sorry to say that these assertions made by apologists only work on the people that are biased and only interested in affirming their own prior beliefs. I want to end with this. Faith on its own is dead as stated by the Bible. And yes, I fully agree with this statement. Mere belief rooted in faith lacks the potency to genuinely persuade an individual. It is through the embodiment of these convictions, living one's life as if they are undeniably real, that belief transforms into a profound certainty. The more one consistently aligns their actions with their convictions, the more tangible and undeniable their faith become on a personal level. Eventually, an unwavering assurance takes root within, leading to the unequivocal declaration, I know it's true in my heart of hearts. This principle extends beyond personal conduct and encompasses a manner in which one lives, acts, and communicates their beliefs to those around them. This is clearly documented, and here are some points to consider. Our brains are wired to find meaning and order in the world, and often we prioritize our goals over strict objectivity. When we encounter a belief that aligns with our hopes, fears, desires, or self image, we're more likely to accept it even without evidence. This phenomenon, known as motivated reasoning, can drive us to interpret ambiguous information as supporting our preferred belief and ignore or discount evidence to the contrary. Also, confirmation bias. Once we hold a belief, we tend to seek out information that confirms it and filter out or downplay evidence that contradicts it. This confirmation bias reinforces our existing beliefs and creates a filter bubble where we're only exposed to information that aligns with our worldview. This can lead to an increasing entrenched belief, even in the absence of objective evidence. If you were wondering if a belief in a God is not practicing the scientific method, well, you are doing science in the sense of repeatability. Only difference is that you repeat seeking out information that only confirms your biases. Thus, this repeating and seeking information to strengthen your belief in God is science. The only difference is the scientific method is not biased and looks at all the available information to come to a conclusion, and not just information that you like. And what is the effect of this on a person? Well, limiting your possibilities. Holding onto an unfounded belief can prevent you from exploring new ideas and experiences, narrowing your worldview and opportunities, reducing critical thinking skills, and which I find to be the most important. If you constantly prioritize reinforcing your beliefs over seeking objective truth, it can erode your critical thinking skills, making it harder to evaluate information objectively, even in other areas of your life. I think I have made my critique clear regarding using faith as a method and reason for holding a belief. It's all in the subjective opinion. I'm actually working on a part 3 of Got to Have Faith, where I will cover misconceptions and how people use and understand faith in our modern day. But for now, I will leave you with a quote from a dear old AI generation. Confidence, by modern definition, is rooted in the objective foundation of evidence, where certainty finds its stronghold in the clarity of reality. In contrast, faith, born of subjective conviction, navigates the waters of uncertainty with a compass of belief. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.